My name is Carol Hutton, and my husband and I own Copple House Farm in Lee, New Hampshire, but I'm also a earth science and physical science teacher.
How long have you guys been farming?
Well, John's been farming his entire life. I grew up in Connecticut around horses, you know, riding horses and stuff. You can see our corn maze up on the hill.
Oh yeah. Part of the things we're asking people about are about the weather and how the weather relates to their work and lifestyles, and any kind of observations about the weather now as opposed to previous years or things like that.
Well, first of all, I feel so fortunate to be farming in New England. I think we have our ups and downs. I think, and I know I have seen the climate change. I mean, John and I sort of feel that we now have a mid-Atlantic state type weather here in the summer. It lasts, I mean, we are actively growing things in September, where our pumpkin crop used to be frosted on September 10th, you know, 20 years ago. It's not happening anymore. I mean, the pumpkins are vibrant and still growing. We're not scared about anything being frosted at that point of the year. Last year, it was too hot for people to come to the corn maze in September. They were still going to the beach. It was so hot in September. That's different. You know, that's not the way it has always been. We don't see a big difference in the winter, but it's the growing season has increased on both ends, in the spring and well into the fall.
Do you talk about reasons why?
Well, we both feel that that man has interfered with, you know, all the carbon, you know, that everything, all of that, you know, that we feel that the atmosphere has changed. I mean that's our foundation, or that's what, you know, where we're going back, you know, to. An interesting thing, I keep a log of things that happen in the spring. I mean, of animal sightings, mostly bird sightings. I mean, I love birds. And, you know, everyone was like, oh, spring is so early this year, you know, so-and-so is back early. And I look back, I'm like, no, this is the same time that the red-winged blackbirds came back last year. And this is the same time that this arrived. And this, you know, people started to say, oh, spring has started. Well, it didn't. We just had a hot spell, and it changed things a little bit, but basically the migration was the same. But crops are able to be grown earlier. I am convinced of that. And they are growing later into the fall. I mean, I'm right here next to UNH. I mean, they have a huge geoscience department, and they do a lot with climatology over there. A friend of mine, he just finished up a master's at UNH, and he's down at NASA now and he's an atmospheric chemist, and, you know, so.
What are they finding?
Well, that there have been alterations recently. There's been a speed up of buildup of gases of the CO2 that they're not seeing, you know, back as far back as their records are going, and the amount of particulate matter and stuff in the air is stronger and more abundant now, and things of that sort. Yeah, they're finding that, and I believe them.
As an earth science teacher, do you keep up with the climate change science and relationship between kind of carbon dioxide emissions and?
You know, I do and I don't. I'm teaching 8th grade, so these are things we touch upon, but with the state of affairs with education right now and what I'm supposed to cover because of testing, I get shorted on a lot of things that I would like to do.
After testing out the corn maze, we went to meet Carol's husband, John. He was harvesting part of his canola crop, and he took a break to talk with us.
Everything kind of builds one right into the next. You try not to miss a cog. You try just to roll from one thing into the next. And diversification, we have the chickens, we have pigs, we have a sheep flock, we do sleigh rides, hay rides with the horses throughout the winter. you need a balance of row crops and livestock to make your farm be sustainable.
Could you talk a little bit about how your work responds to the weather and how your lifestyle is
Well,
impacted by the weather?
our life is deeply affected by the weather. You know, last year we had exceedingly hot September, and then we had early snowfall in October, and that was a $30,000 loss to us in the corn maze automatically. I mean, I kissed $30,000 goodbye because of the weather. It was too hot. People didn't come out. We had no snow this winter. There was another $20,000 shortfall for sleigh rides. So I mean, in a calendar year, we've had a $50,000 shortfall. So weather is very much affecting what we do and how we make it happen. The flip side to that is we're growing soybeans in New Hampshire that when I was your age, you didn't grow soybeans in New Hampshire. You couldn't even think about growing soybeans in New Hampshire.
Why?
We didn't have the weather pattern. We didn't have the frost-free days. We didn't have the ability to get it planted, harvested before the frost left the ground and before the frost returned to the ground. I now have a 35, 40-day window. So, you know, one door closes, another one opens up. The weather's changed hugely. I mean, it used to be, the ground was frozen October 1st. When we moved here 7.5 years ago, I think I've covered my pumpkins once at night for frost. When I was a kid, you covered your pumpkins every single night until you sold them all at your farm stand because frost was out there every single night. And I've seen the frost, those hard frosts go farther and farther back in October, back into November. So it's made us some really nice fall days in October, which is great, but I think we're now getting more mid-Atlantic weather than we are quote-unquote traditional New England weather. I think New England weather is another 100 miles north of here now. I mean, to have 100-degree days in June and July. Never had weather like that when I was a kid. I mean, never have. So, you know, you've got to, I think you've got to get your stuff in earlier. I think rainfall is going to be interesting to see how it goes. Right now, we've got the rain that we've needed. Been very fortunate. Barely, but we've got enough. Most of the people that their livelihood's affected by the weather, I don't think that they'll argue with it there isn't climate change. I think they're a lot more aware and because they live it. I mean, their paycheck's affected by it, and I think they're more aware of climate change and what's caused it. Other than that, you know, they're looking at it as an opportunity to grow something we couldn't grow before. So, you know, when you look back and you say, wow, this is really weird, well, if you look back and take a long view, maybe it's not. Maybe what we've done to the climate has, you know, intensified it. But
what do you mean what we've done to the climate?
Well, I mean, we've put a lot of stuff in the air and stuff that's really caused some problems. How much did the Industrial Revolution change the climate long term? You know, I mean, can't really tell. But I mean, some of the cycles that we're seeing, if you go back and you look at, you know, weather history, you'll see that, you know, it happened before. You know, we've had years where it hasn't snowed New England for 2 or 3 years. Now when it doesn't snow, oh, it's this, that, and everything else. But, you know, have we intensified it or have we not? I mean, I'm not a scientist, so I can't say. One thing I have seen is, like, I am growing soybeans here in New Hampshire, and when I was a kid, you didn't even think about growing that crop. And I've done it. I mean, I just didn't do it 1 year. I've been doing it for 5 years. So, I mean, it's like something's changed.